There's an article that Politico published on, I think it was Friday, and it was about Ocasio-Cortez and the response she's receiving from Democrats in the House. And this is probably my favorite Ocasio-Cortez related news yet, because it really demonstrates just how shitty members of the Democratic Party are, because we all know that there's a number of centrist right-wing Democrats in the House of Representatives that would probably switch teams and be Republicans in the event Republicans moderated and became at least relatively socially liberal. But they don't like the left-wing economic agenda that individuals like Ocasio-Cortez are talking about. And because Ocasio-Cortez is bringing this level of enthusiasm to Congress, well, it's kind of making them look shitty, because their goal is to just coast. They want to make sure that they do the bare minimum and get rewarded by their constituents for it, because they're less shitty than Republicans. And that's true, but what does Ocasio-Cortez do? She comes into Congress and she does so much. She's so passionate about fighting for a progressive agenda, a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, a 70% marginal tax rate. And it gets the constituents of these other members of the House to think, wait, why isn't my representative more like that? Why are they not making headlines pushing for these really bold ideas? So they don't like that, because they love just coasting. They like to just sit there and be a little bit less shitty than Republicans and then get rewarded for it. But Ocasio-Cortez is raising the bar and making them look bad in return. So the Politico article I referenced earlier, it talks about 20 Democrats all in a coordinated effort trying to rein in Ocasio-Cortez to make sure that she ignores the shittiness of her own party and instead turns her ire toward Republicans. Now, I'm not going to read you the article itself, but I do want to get to some of the quotes in this article because I think they're just priceless. So, the first one, quote, "I'm sure Miss Cortez means well, but there's almost an outstanding rule. Don't attack your own people," said Emmanuel Cleaver. "We just don't need sniping in our Democratic caucus. That is, unless you have an independent who caucuses with Democrats, then snipe away. But if it's someone who actually is making the party be introspective for the first time in decades, we don't want to criticize ourselves. We don't want to look in the mirror. We want to just criticize Republicans because they're the ones who are shitty. They're the bad guys, not us." And what Ocasio-Cortez is doing is she's calling them out for their shittiness. And there needs to be people within the Democratic Party that critiques their own team, because politics isn't just about team politics. It's about accomplishing goals. It's about passing policies that actually help the American people. And if you don't have people like Ocasio-Cortez who are going to herd them back to the left, then, I mean, they're just going to get increasingly shitty. And because we haven't had a figure like Ocasio-Cortez, we've seen that the Overton window has shifted to the right because they are getting increasingly shitty. But some more quotes for you. "She needs to decide, does she want to be an effective legislator or just continue being a Twitter star," said one House Democrat who's in lockstep with Ocasio-Cortez's ideology. "There's a difference between being an activist and a lawmaker in Congress." Yeah, we'll agree to disagree there. And furthermore, I doubt that this individual, who remained anonymous, is in lockstep with her policies. Because if you truly cared about the issues, then you have to be an activist in Congress. You don't just say, oh, well, you know, these issues I cared about, I have to put them aside and stop being an activist and deactivate rather, all those things I cared about because now I'm a lawmaker, so now I have to be a grown-up. Fuck out of here. That's a cop-out. And this person is parroting a right-wing attack on her, saying that she cares more about being a celebrity than actually being an effective legislator. And what's implied in that is, well, if she wants to be effective, then shut the fuck up, stop attacking us, or we're going to make sure that we tie your hands. You don't get on any committees. We make sure that we marginalize you in Congress. That's essentially the underlying implication there. Now, they're smart enough to not be explicit about that, but that's exactly what you should take away from that. I'm not reading too much into it. I'm not embellishing. That's essentially what's being said to Ocasio-Cortez. They said this after she protested in Nancy Pelosi's office. Does she want to be an effective legislator or just make a name for herself being a Twitter star? Well, look, If you amass a following, if you have 2.2 million Twitter followers, then that in and of itself is a tool she can use. Because do you really want to piss off the individual who has 2.2 million Twitter followers, who's activated the grassroots, who's willing to protest in your office? I don't think you do, and we're going to get to that because it's clear they are afraid of that. Another quote here. I think she needs to give herself an opportunity to know her colleagues and to give herself a sense of the chemistry of the body before passing judgment on anyone or anything, Representative Yvette Clarke, a fellow New York Democrat, said. Except we can pass judgment because you guys have an 18% approval rating. Also, she's new here, feeling her way around, added Representative Kurt Schrader of Oregon. She doesn't understand how the place works yet. Oh, she doesn't understand. It's not you guys who have been in Congress for decades and have an 18% approval rating. Understand this. We fucking hate you. We hate all of you in Congress because you're not doing anything for us. You're doing nothing. And you don't get to constantly use Republicans as an excuse for you not doing anything, because you could be raising our collective consciousness about issues like a Green New Deal, Medicare for All, while you don't have power like AOC is doing. But you're not doing that, so shut the fuck up. Instead of telling her to shut up, you shut the fuck up because you're not doing anything and you don't know how this works. Because in the event Congress was actually functioning properly, you'd have a higher approval rating than 18%. Another quote here. It's not unreasonable for people to wonder whether she will come after them, said Representative Grace Meng. I'm choosing not to focus on if she's going to run someone against someone, but by seeing how we can more effectively work with her and bring her ideas to the table. Now that was in reference to her primarying corporate Democrats and her associating with the organization Justice Democrats who got her elected. She came in by primarying a corporate Democrat, so of course she's still going to support that. But she recently was vying for a spot on the Ways and Means Committee, which is a very powerful committee, and that actually rubbed some of them the wrong way, because the thought was, oh well, how dare she? This newcomer wants to leapfrog us and get on the Ways and Means Committee all because she has grassroots support. And that's basically what someone said. One anonymous lawmaker stated, it totally pissed off everyone. You don't get picked for committees by who your grassroots supporters are. So they absolutely cannot stand her. And it's, again, because she's making them look shitty. When we get Democrats like AOC and she collectively raises the bar, they have to start performing. They have to start performing. If you've ever worked in sales before and there's like a new salesman or saleswoman that comes in and they just start outselling you, then your bosses are going to look at you and say, well, you're doing something wrong. Look at this person. So that's what AOC is doing to them, and they hate it. And not only do they hate it, they're literally afraid of her. And this is my favorite part of the article because it just... she's accomplishing what I hoped she'd deliver, and that is scaring them so that way they get their act together. So people are afraid of her, said one senior Democratic aide. Two House Democratic sources compared her use of Twitter to Donald Trump's, just as congressional Republicans constantly withhold criticism of the president out of fear he'll unleash a tweet at them. Some Democrats have done the same with Ocasio-Cortez. So this is why some of them are choosing to remain anonymous, because they're, quote, living in fear that she's gonna shoot off a mean tweet. Well, do you want to know who doesn't have to live in fear? Lawmakers who aren't actually garbage. Ro Khanna. People who are actually representing the will of the American people. Everything that she is advocating for, almost every single policy is supported by a majority of Americans. Green New Deal, overwhelming support among Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. Medicare for All, more than 70% of the country supports Medicare for All. Almost 90% of Democrats support Medicare for All, and 52% of Republicans now support Medicare for All. So rather than trying to, quote, rein her in and lambasting her and anonymously firing shots at her because you're afraid she's going to fire off a mean tweet at you, here's an idea. Maybe learn from her. Because all of this enthusiasm surrounding Ocasio-Cortez, it's there for a reason. Bernie Sanders is the most popular senator in America for a reason. And she has garnered a gigantic following and had this meteoric rise for a reason. It's because they're doing something that is unprecedented in this day and age. They're actually listening to the grassroots and trying to follow through on a worker-friendly agenda.
Subscribe if you like this video, folks. Mike's tremendous, and he's doing a really, really good job. Many people are telling me about how wonderful the Humanist Report is. Bigly.